The 1980s are when baseball cards changed forever. The early part of the decade was a continuation of the 1970s, where cards were produced in relatively small numbers and quality control wasn't very good. After competition from Fleer and Donruss arrived in 1981, Topps started to up their game in both ways. They started producing more cards and producing them in better quality. Well, at least trying to produce them in better quality. And from here, things changed dramatically as we emerged into what we now call the junk wax era. Production numbers soared, as did overall interest in baseball cards, and the hobby changed forever. Fast forward 40 plus years, and professional grading of cards has become a big part of the hobby, for some collectors at least. Numbers of graded cards, which PSA makes available, can tell us a lot about both card production details as well as what has interested collectors right up to the present day. Here's some quick background to set the stage. In the 1980s, Topps printed cards on big sheets that look like this. Cards are arranged in 12 rows and 11 columns for a total of 132 cards per sheet. With a total of 6 sheets designed this way, that's 132 times 6, or 792 cards total. That's where that familiar number 792 for the number of cards in a set comes from. In 1980 and 81, complete sets actually had only 726 cards, and that meant some doubles on sheets. You can see a few examples right here. But how many total copies of each card were produced? Well, that's as simple as how many copies of each sheet were printed and later cut into individual cards. Let's start by looking at the early 1980s. In the first part of the 80s, Topps printed 600,000 to 750,000 copies of each card. They've never released official numbers for print runs, so these numbers are estimates averaged from a number of different sources. It's also worth noting that for the purposes of this video, I'm going to ignore the small number of cards that were double prints in 1980 and 1981. Now, in the 40-ish years since these cards were issued, many have been submitted to PSA for grading. Here's what the first few years look like on a percentage basis. The high number there for 1980 is about 0.04 of 1%, which sounds like a tiny number, but it works out to about 1 in 2,600 cards. So if 600,000 of each 1980 Topps card were produced, that means that on average, about 230 of them have been submitted for grading. We'll come back to this graph in a second, but first let's dig a bit into 1980 specifically. So first, here are the written numbers that we just saw. In 1980, 600,000 copies were produced for each card in the set, and about 0.04% of them have been submitted to PSA. But the big card from this set is, of course, the Rickey Henderson rookie card, one of the biggest cards in the entire hobby. Where a typical 1980 Topps card has been submitted to Topps about 230 times, the Henderson card has been submitted a staggering 44,000 times. And that's a massive 7.4% of the total number of Henderson rookie cards ever produced. This huge number of submissions for the Henderson is what has driven the overall percentage for the 1980 set so high, with Rickey making up about a quarter of all submissions. Now let's take a deeper look at those grades from PSA for this Rickey Henderson rookie card. Here are those 44,000 submissions split out by percentage of each of the 10 possible grades. As you can see, 7s and 8s are the most common grade, but there are lots and lots of cards graded at 6 or less. And 9 or 10? Good luck with that. More copies have been graded a 1 than a 10. More copies have been graded a 3 than a 9. It's amazing. That percentage of 10s of 0.06% is 25 individual examples out of the 44,000 graded. And if you think about the 600,000 total Hendersons produced, that's just 1 in 24,000 that have been graded a 10. Okay, let's return to our graph. Before we move ahead, I'll just mention that 1981 and 1982 show significant dips in PSA grading rates, mainly because each set lacks a big rookie card like Rickey Henderson. Yes, Tim Raines is in 1981 and Cal Ripken is in 1982. They're popular cards, but they're not collected and graded anywhere close to what we see for the Rickey. Now, moving ahead, something unexpected happens in 1983, which is that the percentage of cards submitted to PSA spikes back up to 0.29%. What caused that? Well, it's the three big rookie cards, with Ryne Sandberg, Tony Gwynn, and Wade Boggs combining for nearly a third of all submissions for 1983 Topps. So you see the pattern here. A popular set combined with one incredibly popular rookie card or several quite popular rookie cards equals a big spike in submission rates. Now let's look at the middle of the 1980s. Card production went up in 1984 to 1 million copies of each card, and production levels stayed there through 1986. Meanwhile, rates of submission for grading generally continued to drop. The Don Mattingly rookie card is the only highly popular card for grading from the 1984 set. For 1985, the percentage spikes up because the Roger Clemens, Mark McGwire, and Kirby Puckett rookie cards total about 90 submissions themselves, almost the same number of total submissions for the entire 1984 set. Then in 1986, rates plummeted. Not only is this set devoid of any big rookie cards, it's also pretty easy to see any damage or lack of centering due to the black bordered card design. So the total number of submissions is way down to just over 70,000 cards. Just as a reminder, 90,000 cards have been submitted of just the Clemens, McGwire, and Puckett from 1985. That's more than all of 1984 and more than all of 1986. Now, 1987 is where everything really changed. Let's dig into this part of the story. So, 1986 was an interesting set, but the design made it really hard to produce cards of high quality, and Topps started to really suffer at the hands of Donruss and Fleer. This was a critical turning point for Topps as they realized their 86 design was a failure, particularly in terms of design and print quality. So for 1987, they decided to do something special. They reached back 25 years to their 1962 wood panel design and made their new set an homage to that older set. They also updated their printing and cutting processes to produce higher quality cards. But the biggest change they made? They increased their print run from 1 million copies per card in 1986 all the way to 2.5 million copies in 1987. That's a massive increase for 1 year, and it had a massive impact on the hobby. So starting in 1987, we enter what we now call the junk wax era. We didn't call it that at the time, where cards were produced in much greater numbers than they ever had been before, and much greater numbers than they were in the 2000s and through to today. As mentioned, production went all the way up to 2.5 million copies of each card in 1987, to 3.5 million in 1988, and 3.75 million in 1989. And how many of these cards have been submitted to PSA? The percentages have plummeted. For 1988, that rate is just 0.0015%, which averages out to about only 1 out of every 69,000 copies of each card. That's what happens with an overproduced product, especially without any highly sought rookie cards. Nice. Even 1987 Topps, which contains lots of collectible rookies including Barry Bonds, Bo Jackson, Barry Larkin, Jose Canseco, Kevin Mitchell, as well as Mark McGwire's first card with the Athletics, has a low submission rate. In fact, look at this side-by-side comparison. First, a reminder of the data from 1980 Topps. And now here's 1987 Topps by comparison. About 4 times as many cards were produced, but about the same total number of cards have been submitted to PSA. Now, if you take away a great class of rookie cards, you get 1988. Despite about 6 times as many cards produced as compared to 1980, the total submissions for 1988 is only 40,000 cards, which is fewer than have been submitted of the 1980 Rickey Henderson card alone. To understand what's going on, the easiest thing to do is go back to the PSA grading histogram. Here's that 1980 Rickey Henderson card again, and now let's add in the 1987 Topps Barry Bonds rookie card. Both cards grade most commonly to an 8, but notice that grades 1 through 7 make up 64% of the Henderson population, nearly 2/3, while 1 through 7 grades are only 24% of the Bonds population, less than a quarter. More than 3/4 of the Bonds cards are 8s, 9s, or 10s, and the 10s are 100 times more prevalent than 10s for the Henderson. Think about that. 100 times more likely to get a pristine Barry Bonds rookie card than a pristine Rickey Henderson rookie card. Why? Well, there are a few reasons, and these act as good conclusions for this video, so let's wrap it up. What are the main factors that determine card value? Well, just like everything, it comes down to scarcity and appeal, and if you think about it, that's just another way of saying supply and demand. First off, older cards tend to be in worse condition, just because they've been kicking around for longer. Maybe they've been sliding around in a shoebox, getting bleached by the sun, or exposed to mold or smoke. Whatever it might be, this makes older cards hard to find in good shape. The larger the print run, the easier it is to get cards in good condition. This is just a simple numbers game. Cards produced by Topps in the late 1980s weren't perfect in terms of quality control. There are plenty of misprinted or miscut cards, but it's also not particularly hard to find a card that is well printed and well centered. The more copies Topps prints, the easier it is to find perfect examples. Quality control matters. And this is really getting at what percentage of a total print run is in pristine condition. For example, of the multiple millions of cards that Topps produced in 1989, a higher percentage were manufactured to high quality standards than the millions of cards they made in 1987. This just makes it easier to find copies in great condition, and also means that imperfect copies are less likely to be collected or graded. And finally, older cards are more likely to be submitted for grading, and this is all down to value. Imagine you found a Barry Bonds rookie card that looked like it would grade to a 7. Would you be excited? Maybe for the fun of collecting, sure, but not in terms of value, as that card would be worth less than $1. Now imagine you found a Rickey Henderson rookie card that also looked like a 7. That's definitely a fun find, but also a valuable one, as that card in a PSA 7 sells for well over $100 these days. So there you have it. The 1980s will always remain a fascinating decade for baseball cards, and the dynamics developed during that period still dominate both production and collecting habits today. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and I'd love to hear what your favorite cards from the 1980s are. Please hit that like button, subscribe for more, and have a great day. See you soon.